Okay, so here we jump into number 2. Who was it, my previous one, just out of interest? Okay, a few. Oh, most. So changing tack, within the space of 3 minutes, but that's cool. This one is the Alongersiders seminar, and I have written a book, and I brought a few copies with me. It's a pretty good book, actually. So if you want a copy, it is $20. If you want me to sign it, $22.50. But what I thought in this session is I just pick out some bits and pieces of wisdom from the book, but there's a whole lot of stuff, if you don't mind me saying so. And this is a book that's not aspirational, like, come on, guys. This is like, this is how we do it. This is the vehicle. This is the mechanism. This is the tool. And it's not technique. It's sort of like when you're getting alongside someone who's different and difficult, it's like wisdom, practical wisdom. So yeah, I've got some coffees here, and if you haven't got $20 cash, I can just give you an account number, that kind of thing. So yeah, feel quite free to come up afterwards and grab one. So I'm a bit of a storyteller, so that's how I start. So let me share a story. We used to live in Mangere Bridge, and I'll never forget the time when I was at the supermarket, and as you do, you get your food, and I put it all in a basket, and and then you get to the queues, the checkout counters, try and work out which one is the quickest. And so I chose a queue, but before I got to that queue, I heard this voice behind me say, "Oh, g'day, Mick." And I turned round, and there was someone, who's this person, and she said, and she was in a wheelchair. She said, "Oh, Mick, you don't know me, but I've heard you or heard about you or something like that, So we got to we got to just chatting, as you do. And we chatted away and all this kind of stuff. And she then moved to that checkout counter, and I stayed in this one here. And she chose better than I did. And she got through that one, and I'm just sort of going rats. Because you know how you do it, you compare yourself, So I said, "See ya." She said, "See ya." And then I got through mine, got outside of the supermarket, and there she was waiting for me. And she said, "Mick, can we go chat somewhere? Can we go sit somewhere and chat?" And I say to her with a smile, on my dial as it were, I say, "Well, you've already got your chair." And she just laughed. I could tell she had a wicked sense of humour, So she just laughed. And then I said, "Look, there's a cafe down there. Let's rock on down." So bags in hand, we went down to this cafe and just chatted about, all sorts of stuff. And then, I don't know, after about 40 minutes, she just said to me, "You're one of those effing Christians, aren't you?" And I said, "Yep, I'm a fun-filled Christian. Yep, that's a..." I had to do a quick rescue on that one. And then she said this in all seriousness. She said, "How can your effing God be real when I've been in this wheelchair all my life?" Now, I don't know what you would say at that point, but I just sort of slightly leant back, and I said, "Well, I'm real." I didn't feel at that point to defend God or, I just said, "I'm real." And I said, "Would you like to have coffee next week, same day, same time?" And she said, "Yeah." And so we rocked up the next week and the next week, and then for 2 years. And then after 2 years, she said, "So, what does it mean to be and become a Christian?" And I got a paper bag because I've worked out this thing from my own life that I can do when someone asks that question. And so for the next hour, I had her absolutely enthralled. She loved it. And then we had another 2 years, same time, same place, most weeks of the year. And then I had to leave that neighbourhood because of, work-related stuff. And so, but, when I first started doing this time with her and she doing the time with me, this thing what I call the alongside relationship, she's doing hard porn. And she said to me 8-9 hours a day. Hard porn. Hard porn, yeah. And then at the end of the 4 years, and it doesn't happen this way with everybody, but at the end of 4 years, she was attending church. And she, that program on Saturday morning on TV1, is it for differently abled people? What's it called? Attitude? Or she was one of the finalists. Because over the 4-year period, she'd become this kind of entrepreneurial kind of person and got recognition for that. But it was 4 years. So that's first story. Second story, not my story, but it's one I love. So there was this kind of lady, and she was a hardcore atheist, Marxist, lesbian kind of creature. And she was watching, this is an American, she was watching this kind of real right-wing, super fundamentalist, sorry for the labels, but he was just coming out with too much hate language. I'm sorry, it just wasn't people honouring enough. And she got, understandably so incensed. I mean, you kind of get it. And so she started to write this article, having a real go at this kind of brand of Christianity, if you want to put it that way. And it got published, and then she waited. And what was she waiting for? She waited for the hate mail. And it came in by the bucket loads. So what she did was she got some tissue boxes and emptied the tissue boxes of the tissues. And she put, one tissue box here, one tissue box here, one tissue box here, big tissue boxes. And with the hate ones, well, they went in that pile. With the sympathetic ones, they went in that one. And with the kind of okayish ones, they went in this one. And for weeks, it was like, boom, boom, boom. Oh. You know what I mean? And then she got one letter. And this letter was from Ken and Flo. Just love it, eh? From Ken and Flo. And Ken and Flo, basically, they wrote this brilliant, gracious, articulate, carefully researched, people honouring, disagreeing, but and she got this letter. Christians, Ken and Flo. And she went like this. Like, where do I put this letter? So she scrambled it up and put it in the rubbish bin. That's what she did. And then through the day, she couldn't keep, this letter kept coming back. And she remembered that they had actually PS, would you like to have dinner with us? And so later in the day, she picked up this letter out of the rubbish tin, unraveled it, and got the, contact details. And so she contacted them and said, thank you so much for your good letter. Yeah, I would like to I'd like to come and have that dinner. So she went and had dinner with Ken and Flo. And then over 8 years, they immersed themselves in each other's worlds. I mean, her name is Rosario. She would go to their dinner parties and go to their functions and go to their party. You know what I mean? So she became and then they went to her gatherings. And over 8 years, they became genuine kind of, And then one morning, she turned to her lover, just said, I'm going to their church, a Presbyterian church. This is after 8 years. So she rolled out of bed, and of course her lesbian lover just sort of rolled her eyes, and then went to this church. And she attended this church in the back row for about 5 years. And all the while, Rosario, Ken and Flo, just doing time together, doing all manner of time. And then there was one particular Sunday after 5 years where it was a bit like Lydia in the book of Acts. Her heart was open and she was enabled to see Jesus, the resurrected Jesus Christ. And so Rosario became a disciple of Jesus Christ. And this is her story. It's not everybody's story like this, but it's her story. She actually ended up getting married. And she married a Presbyterian minister. And now they serve together in a local church. So that's not everyone's story like that, but it's her story. It's brilliant, brilliant story. I've just told you two. What are the commonalities between the two? What did you hear between those two stories? Share that. Is it getting a bit cool in here? Is it just right? Yeah, you like it? Okay. Just with the person next to you, what did you see in those two stories? What did you hear in those stories? Go to it. Okay, friends, here we go. Oh, yeah? Just tell me some of the things that you heard in those two stories, just very briefly. Anyone?
You're just there. You're just there for them.
Yep.
Immersing in their life,
Yep.
but not pushing.
Yep, good. That is a very important point, not pushing. I have learnt that people have now got crap detectors. Do you know what I mean? In other words, for people to survive in our world today, they've developed the kind of the intuition muscle where they can sum up a person in front of them within 20 seconds. Do you get what I mean? If they sense that you have an agenda, you lose them. And they can smell it. They can see it in your eyes, they can smell it. So I've learned with this alongside of stuff, I've got to get real clear and clean at centre. Like, I'm going to sit in their puddle and they're going to sit with me, and who knows what will happen. That's the spirit I embark on this sort of stuff. Yeah, so I like that. Anyone else, what did you see? Relationship. Yeah, but did you notice that it was more than just a friendship? Because it was highly intentional. Like, okay, every week for 4 years. Because when you do natural friendship, it's like, hey, we can do random. I wasn't doing random. I was doing, hey, how about you and I meet in this place every week, when possible, for as long as we can. So it's sort of an alongside is becoming more than a friend, but less than a social worker. Do you know what I mean? Now, there's a place for social workers, but I don't know. I think people are desperately hungry for someone who's more than a friend, but less than a professional. Do you get it? Yeah. Oh, kindness is a big word. Yeah. I mean, you know what happened here, friends? Like when Brenton Tarrant down here in Christchurch, and he does have a name. And I'm praying that in the heart of a prison, which he rightly deserves, he will discover our God and have a connection with that God through Jesus Christ. But what happened down here in Christchurch, a senior pastor told me this, that when those shootings occurred, a lot of well-meaning Christians, they said, oh, we can bake a cake, we can do this, we can do that. And this pastor said to me, but no one actually said, how can we get alongside a Muslim? So they were all willing to look after the kids. You know what I mean? The practical. And when Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, he says, as I have been comforted, you comfort. Do you know that word comfort? In the Greek, and I'm not a Greek scholar, but in the Greek it carries the idea of allowing someone to get close to you. Now, I struggle with that as I shared this morning. So I've had to learn. It's not natural for me. It's more natural for some of you. So it's that getting close with people. This alongside of stuff. I did 4 years with that woman. She got close to me, I got close to her. Yeah.
Why was she pursuing you, and why did you pursue that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what? Absolutely. So he's saying this.
If you're thinking about
yeah.
how you deal with it when something like that happens, perhaps we need to be aware that, hey, this is God trying to do something.
You're onto it.
With regard
yeah.
to what you're saying, not got involved
Yeah.
Muslim thing with
Great.
alongside.
Yeah.
If they're going to visit
Yeah.
the mosque.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, people, you've got to hear that. I mean, he says some really good things. Where I'm up to with this is our God is out there, and it's sort of like he's in the playground. And the miracle that will often happen with us today is the miracle of divine coincidence. Do you know what I mean? And it will just so happen I was getting my groceries, and it just so happened she was getting her groceries. And do you get what I mean? I honestly think that we've got to become like little children again, because children are so alert to what happens around them. But to be alert to what is happening around you, you've got to slow down. And there's no record of Jesus running in the Gospels. In other words, Jesus, he exercised the practice of slowing. Do you get it? And when you slow, you see. So I better move on. I've got to keep moving on. So those were some of our observations. Now look, listen people, to pull this stuff off, this intentional stuff with people, I think, and I mentioned some of these things in the book, but it kind of goes like this. Look, the first thing is we've got to be at our cerebral best with people. Cerebral? And what I mean by that is, like, there's this story, like this monkey in a tree and the river is in flood and the monkey sees a fish that is struggling in the waters. So the monkey climbs out onto a limb and scoops the fish up and then scurries to the shore and then lays the fish on dry ground. And the fish initially shows some excitement. And as the monkey watches the fish, the monkey, feelings of satisfaction well up inside of the monkey because he has successfully helped another creature. And if you don't mind me saying so, and I'm not being unkind here, a lot of Christians are monkeys. Now, what I mean by that is they don't understand what is happening for people. So a lot of Christians are well-meaning. Do you get what I'm saying here? But they're totally ignorant sometimes on the plight of the person in front of them. And they can end up doing something that actually causes further damage. So what I've learned is that you have to get the smarts on this. So when I was beginning this kind of, I want to be an alongsider with people, I want to get alongside with people that when they sit alone. I want to be the kind of person who will get alongside, especially the people that everybody else dislikes. And then when you do get alongside them, you discover why everybody else dislikes them. But nevertheless, I still want to do time, you know what I mean? Time with them and they with me. But I thought I could have smarts, I could have street smarts. And so what I did initially was that, when you're in the dentist, so you go to the dentist waiting to be drilled and you pick up a magazine and there's an article in the magazine, let's say on depression. So, I ripped it out. Well, it's for the public. So I ripped it out and then I take it home and, get a manila folder. This is what I did. And I put it in the manila folder. I put depression up the top right-hand corner. And so after a while, I had 2 boxes full of manila folders on different topics. Then I graduated to a 2-drawer filing cabinet. Then I was getting stuff from newspapers from all over. This is decades ago. And then I graduated to a 4-drawer, another 4-drawer, another 4-drawer, another 4-drawer. I tell not a lie. Slightly obsessive compulsive, I know. But, masses of, really good stuff. And when you're reading a book, who reads books here? A few of us. When you're reading a book and you see something, you go, that's gold. Do you know what I mean? That is so good. It's so good, I'll never forget it. You know what I mean? So what I haven't got good long-term memory. So what I do is I put, that's on eating disorders. Okay. Back of the book, right? Eating disorder, page 33. And then I got index cards. Those I've got them on my computer now, but this is pre-computer. And I got all these cards, one on depression, and author's name, title of book, page number, eating disorder. Do you know what I mean? And I got all of these index cards. Now, this didn't come natural to me. I got expelled from university. You need to hear that. This is all learnt behaviour. This is all like, I'll do whatever. And so it came to it, like, I'd never forget, there was a girl that she rang me up, I didn't know her, and she said, Mick, can we have coffee? Fine. So I was lecturing at a college at this point, so I raced down to this cafe, she sat in front of me, and we did the chit-chat, and then I said, you just want to do chit-chat, which is cool by me, or did you have something that you wanted, And she said, yeah, Mick, I heard, someone said that you're a good guy to talk to, and so I said, oh, please do tell. She said, I'm a Christian, and I'm a lesbian. So I didn't know what you would say again at that point, so I just said to her, I'd love to hear your story. Genuinely, love to hear your story. So she told me her story, and then I looked at my clock. Oh my goodness, I've got to be back to give a lecture. So I said, thanks, I got to go. And she was so surprised by this that I didn't feel the need to say anything, that I just heard, and you know what I mean? So she said to me, could we do the same next week? I said, yep, I'm up for it. What was I doing between the two coffees? I went to my manila folder. And I went to my index card. And within 10 minutes, I had gold. So I went, had the next coffee. And I asked knowing questions. And she knew I knew. Because these were intelligent questions. They weren't monkey questions. Do you see what I'm getting at? So as a result of that, she said, can we do another coffee? And then there was 1 week, some weeks later, I had 4 people independent of each other from the Christian gay community asked to have coffees with me. And on the third one, I said, do you know something I don't know, And then they said, oh, don't you know? And I said, please do tell, And they said, oh, Mick, they said, you are getting a name. You are becoming a go-to person. And see, Jesus was a go-to person. Word of mouth got round that Jesus was okay, actually, to get close to and talk to. You know what I mean? And we are to become go-to persons in our neighbourhoods, in our workplaces, in amongst our extended families. And it's not natural for me. I told you enough this morning. This is not naturally Mick. You might see me up front here. This is just the communicator in me. Do you know what I mean? But when it comes to interpersonal relationships, this is not me. I have to go to learnt behaviour. Do you trust me on that? Okay. So that's being at your cerebral best. Tell the person next to you just for 30 seconds what you thought of that. Go to it. Okay, guys, here we go. So I know we live in a kind of New Zealand is an anti-intellectual, there's an anti-intellectualism here actually. We're not good readers, but for the sake of other people I will read. And that means less screen time. So for decades now I've said no to 1,000 things so I could say yes to a few things. Not because I'm natural at this sort of stuff, but I just want to, for the sake of another. Do you see? And become that go-to person. So I don't know what you do with that, but I think what I'd like to say next is, in this alongside of stuff, we've got to be at our conversational best. New Zealanders culturally are not good conversationalists. So my first degree is I got expelled from university, and then after that I went back to uni. It took me 20 years to knock off my first degree, which is in sociology, because I did it part-time. And then I got a master's, and then I got a PhD, and so on. So I'm a bit of an observer. I do think New Zealanders have lost the art of civil discourse, of having kind of civil conversations. I don't want to be unkind here, but I don't know. Oh, yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, but even in our churches, I think the Achilles heel in our churches is conflict. And this is New Zealand. And it's because we don't do courageous conversations well. So I went on a learning track. I mean, the first 15 years of my married life were horrendous. We were fighting and arguing and, it's just terrible. So as a result of that, it took me 15 years to learn that this sort of, the way I was doing conversation wasn't working. So I went on a big, massive learning curve, and I just read anything I could, talked to anybody I could. I attended seminars. And so I've got all this kind of learnt behaviour now. But so just a couple of things that I would say on this one is to be at our conversational best. I think the big challenge is to be better listeners. I think that's one of the greatest services that we can give another person. And there's a guy in Australia, he's a social psychologist. His name is Humour, and he wrote a book called, I think it's called The Art of Effective Listening from memory. And he says, I haven't got time to go through, and it's in the book, so it's a bit of a promo. But he says this, and I'll just give one thing. He says, the key to being an effective listener is to have the courage to listen. And you're thinking, why do you need courage? I mean, this conference is on courage, so why do you need courage in listening? Well, let me tell you another story. Sorry about the stories, but I got this other phone call, hadn't met this person. And she rang me up and said, we have coffee. And I said, fine. Sometimes it's not coffee, by the way. And so we sat down and you do the chit-chat, and then I say, hey, look, and she said, look, I've been going out with this, non-Christian guy, and I've been taking him to Alpha, and then after about 6 weeks, he invited me to his place for dinner. I get through the front door of his place and I see this big poster above the fireplace, and it's of his Eastern guru. And I'm just staring at it, and he said, oh, would you like me to tell you about my Eastern guru? And she sort of stammers and stutters out a yes. So this is what she's telling me. And so for the rest of the evening, that's what went down. And then she went back home. The following morning, she opened up her email tray, and there was an email from him. And the email said, I don't want to see you again. And then she said to me, like I'm some sort of answering machine, she said, so what happened? But then, because of the kind of research that I've done, I smelt something, I saw something. So I said, well, let's try this out. So I said, so you were taking him to Alpha, and you were asking of him to have the courage to change his mind if he was so persuaded. She said, yep. So when the roles were reversed and he was telling you about his Eastern guru, were you just hearing him or listening to him? Tick tock, tick tock. Did you get that or not? Did you get it? You see, what's happening now in our churches, but also outside out there, people know that Christians aren't listening anymore because they sense that we haven't got the courage or the curiosity to maybe be willing to change our mind on things, if so persuaded. And on some things, that's got to be a big if. But they can sense that we are hearing but not listening. Did you get that? That's courage. And I've changed my mind on a few things because of listening and not just hearing. If people sense, so that's the first thing, if people sense you're a really good listener, because they can tell pretty quickly, they start to open up like a book with you. They do. And they then say something conflictual. In other words, you could disagree with. So under conversational best, what do you like with conflict? And, because I was bad at conflict and there was blood on the floor, as a leader, as a pastor, as a father, I'm not exaggerating here. I've had to learn heaps. And I chanced upon, have you heard of the New Zealand author by the name of Joyce Huggett? She wrote an excellent book, and in that book, she puts this up. This is a little tool, and I've got it in the book. So she says that, there are conflict avoiders, there are conflict yielders, there are conflict compromisers, there are conflict resolvers. Can you read that? And there are conflict competitors. So I learnt this by heart when I'm with people. And so let me ask a question. On a bad hair day, which as I say is every day for me, but on a bad hair day, which one of these are you essentially? You've been a good listener. Something is said with these people who are difficult or different. Do you see what I mean? This alongside a relationship. And then you know this has potential for strong disagreement, conflict. Which one of these are you on a bad hair day? So are you this one? You conflict avoid, you shut up, you zip up, you get out of the room. Are you this one where you yield and you just forever say to people, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. You yield? Are you this person where you, I don't know, 50-50, win-win, lose-lose, come on, let's be fair, let's give a little, you know what I mean? Are you this person here, I'm going to fix this? You've got a fixer personality? Or are you this person down here, I'm going to win it? Conflict competitor. So on a bad hair day, which one of those are you? Tell the person next to you. Okay, guys, seeing you're so self-aware. Seeing you guys are so self-aware. This is on a bad hair day. This is like when you've not had enough sleep, you know what I mean? You're grumpy, you've got out of the bed on the wrong side. I don't know, but which one? How many avoiders in the room? Thank you for your honesty. How many yielders? Thank you. How many compromisers? You know, how many resolvers? Not one. Oh, I got half hand. Oh, yeah, half hand. I saw that half hand. How many competitors in the room? Right. Now, this is the question that Joyce Huggett asked. She said, which one of these 5 do you think most Christians would say is the preferred way to go? Yeah, that's exactly it. She said that most Christians say that the resolver is the preferred way to go. She says all of them. And some of you picked this up. Joyce Huggett says actually all of them. And she goes like this. She says this. She said, when is it right to avoid? Well, sometimes right relationship is more important than right opinion. So shut up. Do you see what I mean? When is it right to yield? Well, when you're wrong. You know. When is it right to compromise with someone? When it's a secondary issue. Just lighten up. Why are you getting so precious? Yeah, that's right. Come on. When is it right to resolve? Sort of if it's the right time and you can do it. But sometimes some people with fixer personalities, I don't know. They need to back the truck up. You know what I mean? My wife has a fixer. And anyway, enough said. And when is it right to compete? Well, when I think it's a real, genuine life and death issue. And you just can't, you got to hold your ground. And yeah. I find that a really helpful tool. In a way, yeah, to put it in a phrase.
Does that depend on where you're at in the journey?
Oh, yes, very good. So thanks, Peter. So Peter says, does that depend upon, so where you're on that journey with that person? So like with people in the early phases of the relationship, for example, we very rarely do it in our home. Because, for some of these people, if I've got homeowner hat, father hat, all that kind of stuff, marriage hat, that triggers stuff in them that our relationship is not ready to handle. So we meet in cafes and beaches and parks and all this kind of stuff initially. But sometimes I do this in the early stages. Because we're just not there in our relationship to do the deep dive on some stuff. Yeah, so that's helpful, Peter. Yes?
Can I just say, I know that you spoke within men's groups, and we have conversations like this sometimes, but then I thought, man, so what did Jesus do? Sometimes he didn't
Yes.
just shut up, right?
Yeah.
And then other times he's turning over tables, goes, nah, there's no compromise.
Yeah.
This is my father.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look at him as an example and go, yeah, like all of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I've been
Yeah.
at
Good.
the point where it's all working.
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah. So people, we've done cerebral best. And we've done a little bit on conversational best, and there's so much more that could be said. I just want to finish now with compassionate best. That's a big word, compassionate best. I think one of the challenges for us is to suspend judgment with people. Especially with outsiders, people out there. In fact, it says in both Corinthians and James, we're not to judge outsiders. It actually says that we're to judge one another. But, Christians are so sneaky and smart, we've flipped it. Do you get that? So we've just got to accept one another and we judge them. But in fact, Scripture flips it and says, no, we're to admonish one another. Colossians 3:16, and we're not to judge, which I think is interesting. And I was so glad that pastor, I shared it in my workshop, the pastor, I think I shared it this morning, where Murray Robertson, anyone know Murray here? Murray said to me, you're dead useless at relationships. I mean, he was admonishing me. And that changed my life. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Murray. Suspending judgment. The social scientists have worked out that we human beings, within 2.2 and 4.6 seconds, have summed up the person in front of us. That's almost hard to believe. But within 2.2 and 4.6 seconds, we've summed them up. And the whole point of compassion is to stay open to an alternative explanation of what you see and hear in front of you. And the person could tell that you're doing that. If they sense in you, let me tell you this story, true story. This guy gets on a train and he's got his 3 kids in tow. True story. Gets on the train. And the train takes off, and these 3 kids, they act out terribly on the train. They're just all over the place, mayhem and madness. And then a whispering campaign starts up in the train carriage. And everybody's saying how terrible they are and what kind of parent is he and what has he done that those kids act out so badly and rah, rah, rah. And he gets to hear, it becomes obvious, he gets to hear. So there's a point in the trip where he stands up in the train carriage and he says this, we have just come from the hospital and their mother, she died. In other words, what the people in the train carriage did was premature judgment. And the mark of a compassionate person is to suspend judgment. And that's why I like to say to Christians, you've got to hear this. When you're dealing with people, you don't start with black and white, you start with grey. Do you get that? You start with grey because, okay, this person in front of you, they may, I don't know, but if you come shooting from the hip with black and white, but I say hit the pause button, get the handbrake on, because you don't know the backstory. And the backstory for this person could be a story of terror. So we disagree with what we see and hear. But I need to get to know their story of terror. Do you see what I mean? So go to the grey, which is the murky area, and then step by step we work towards the black and the white. And all 3 colours are beautiful. Yeah, so that's the first thing I would say, suspending judgment. And the last thing that I would say on compassionate best is, look, listen, there was this young guy, and, he takes college students through the red light district, all that kind of stuff in a city. And they came across a corner, and there were some ladies, scantily clad, obviously wanting to pick up business. And one of these, college students from a Christian college said to this guy, Mark, who was leading the exposure trip. Oh, that's the wrong word. But you know what I mean. And this guy said to Mark, the leader, is she a prostitute? This is a true story. Is she a prostitute? And Mark, the leader, sort of paused, And then Mark, the leader, said, and of course the college student was wondering why the pause, it's obvious. And then Mark said, no, she's not a prostitute. She's a person in prostitution. I had to speak at a prisoners' conference. And I said to the whole gathering, I said, there's no such thing as a prisoner. And they all looked at me. I said, there are people in prison. And there's no such thing as a homosexual. But there are people in homosexuality. I'm always fascinated, because you mentioned Jesus before. I don't know, it's amazing when people came to Jesus. It was like they were using their eyes to look into the eyes of Jesus to see how he was looking at them. And I reckon we get the picture in the Gospels of people came to Jesus and they looked into his eyes. And what did they see? They saw Jesus looking at them with the look of, another one of my Father's children. Do you know what I mean? Mary Magdalene, not the label, prostitute. And so people just gravitated towards Jesus. Compassionate best. Yeah. So there you are, friends. I don't know what you do with all of that. But that's bits and pieces that I felt to share. Any comment or question? Yeah.
Something just around that last point
Yeah.
you made, and I'm reflecting on myself.
Yeah.
And it's you're on the road and someone does something stupid and it's that instant thing of, you stupid driver.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing you and saying, stupid driving.
Yeah, good. That's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Because the danger also
Yeah.
we label.
Yeah, well, that's it.
And that goes out.
Yes. And there is a fair bit of labelling that is occurring amongst Christians in our churches. And I think it's got to stop. We need to reframe this complexity without going all PC, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
I just want to thank you for me anyway, the encouragement of obedience, because I had a friend who's not a Christian, who's an amputee, and was in a wheelchair, and had to go to hospital to literally potentially become a double amputee. And she put all on social media what was happening, and hundreds of people said, we'll see you in hospital. And when I challenged her to take time out of the day to see her, I said, you're the only one who turned up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. See, but if you don't mind me picking up on, and I know you didn't mean it this way, like when we say non-Christian, so that's another label, you see. So, and I agree with the reality of it, but in terms of my communication strategy, do you see what I'm getting at? I now say, here is a person who self-defines themselves as, and then I'll say X, Y, Z. But I'm trying to, again, get away from the label.
It's an interesting one, because I've been challenged by Christian friends who won't call themselves Christians, but followers of Jesus and stuff. And I said, I've been here.
Yes.
I'm actually happy to be
Yeah. I've actually moved away personally from the word Christian, and I call myself in public with those people who self-define themselves. I actually say, I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. Because the word follower now, you have Facebook followers, and as you say, it's all been watered down with that example. And even Christian is a loosey-goosey word now. I mean, what does that... So actually I'm, and it's a bit confronting, but I actually say I'm a disciple now. Yeah. And any other final comment? Yeah.
Sorry, something that didn't seem to come out of that, your very first point was the times when you met with a lady, it went on for weeks and months
Yeah.
and years.
Yes.
Both of those first two stories spoke, so you weren't in a rush.
No.
You didn't rush it.
Oh, you have...
It's got to be done by the 3
Yeah.
seconds.
And we have a slow God. No, we do. We have a slow God. Look how many, with the Israelites, he was slow. And look how long the church has been prior to the second coming. We have a slow God. I wish we exercised that art of slowing with people. Yeah. Anyway, anything else final? Yeah.
Just going to just talk about a personal thing that happened with me. I have the envious task of being a school bus driver. And,
Just keep up moving. Yeah.
Yeah, but a few years ago I had this kid on the bus that was
Yeah.
really playing up.
Yeah.
And then one afternoon I had to bundle him back to school and shove him in the hands of the teachers. But I was labelled and mischievous.
Oh, yes.
And what came out of that, this kid was a kid from SIFS. His home was just...
Absolutely. Yes.
And so he was just playing up.
Yes. Yeah.
Since then, I've using learning now, when these kids are playing up the bus,
Yeah.
the high school kids, I now start finding myself,
Oh.
what's that experience,
Yeah.
what's going on at home.
Yeah. That is so good.
It's amazing the
Yeah.
rapport there,
Yeah. No.
the shift in that,
Yeah.
the very thing you talk
Great example. Great. Hey, I've got to close it down, people. So thank you so much for attending. And if you do want a copy of the book, coming up at the front. Yeah. Bless you.